Hey there, comic fans! Welcome back to Comic Yahud. Today we're diving into Chapter 4 of Tintin and the King Ottokar Sceptre. Let's get started. Tintin, bewildered, explains to the professor that he heard cries for help over the phone, prompting his rushed arrival. The professor, equally puzzled, denies any such incident, leaving Tintin confused and concerned. As Tintin walks away with Snowy by his side, he ponders the inexplicable event, convinced he heard the cries clearly. His mind races with possibilities, unable to shake the feeling that something is amiss. The next morning, Tintin, along with Thompson and Thompson, arrives at the airport to see off Professor Alembic. The professor expresses his gratitude for their presence, while the detectives assure him it was their pleasure to come. Tintin introduces Professor Alembic to Thompson and Thompson, highlighting the professor's expertise as a sigillographer. The professor greets the detectives warmly, and they politely respond, creating a cordial atmosphere. Tintin notices the detectives' new hats and comments on them. Thompson enthusiastically explains that the hats are made of pure English felt and were a bargain, adding a touch of lightheartedness to their farewell. An airport attendant stands beside a bright yellow plane, calling out for passengers bound for Prague, marking the start of a new journey. The plane, gleaming under the sun, promises adventure as its propellers await to spin into action. Tintin stands at the foot of the plane's stairs, shaking hands with Thompson and Thompson, who wish him farewell and luck in Syldavia. He offers a grateful thanks, appreciating their support as the attendant stands ready to guide him aboard. Inside the cockpit, the pilot's hands move deftly over the controls, his voice commanding as he initiates the plane's startup sequence. The words, compression, petrol on, contact, echo, signaling the imminent takeoff and the adventure that awaits Tintin. As the plane's engines roar to life, the propellers spin with fierce energy, causing Thompson and Thompson's hats to fly off with a swift gust. The two detectives, caught off guard, watch helplessly as their prized hats are whisked away into the sky. Thompson and Thompson scramble across the field in a frantic attempt to retrieve their runaway hats, their feet barely keeping pace. The urgency in their movements mirrors the chaos of the unexpected situation. The detectives skidded to a stop, staring in horror as their hats were flattened beneath the wheels of a passing red fuel truck. They exchanged a look of disbelief and exasperation, their chase forgotten in the face of this latest mishap. The bright yellow plane soars through the clear blue sky, its engines humming steadily as it carries Tintin toward his destination. The journey ahead is filled with promise as the aircraft cuts gracefully through the air. Inside the plane, Professor Alembic gazes out the window, inviting Tintin to admire the picturesque sight of sheep grazing below. Tintin nods appreciatively, joined by Snowy, who curiously peers down the aisle. Professor Alembic points enthusiastically, prompting Tintin to lean closer for a better view. As they both marvel at the tiny figures below, their conversation blends with the gentle hum of the flight, creating a moment of shared wonder. As Tintin settles into his seat, a sudden disturbance captures his attention, leaving him puzzled by the unexpected sensation. He glances to the professor, his curiosity piqued by the unusual occurrence. Tintin murmurs to himself, noting the oddity of the situation as he looks at the professor, searching for answers. His uneasiness grows, adding an edge to the tranquil flight. The plane continues its journey through the sky, steady and unwavering, as it carries Tintin and his thoughts. Inside the cabin, Professor Alembic inquires if they are about to land, to which Tintin confirms they are briefly stopping in Frankfurt. Tintin's reassurance calms the professor as the plane begins its descent. The bright yellow plane descends gracefully, its wheels skimming the runway as it touches down in Frankfurt. The brief landing provides a momentary pause in their journey, promising a short respite before continuing onward. As they disembark, a uniformed officer approaches Professor Alembic with a telegram, interrupting their brief stopover. Tintin stands by, intrigued by this unexpected delivery as Snowy waits patiently at their side. Professor Alembic holds the telegram with excitement, exclaiming, "Aha," as Tintin looks on curiously. Professor Alembic shares the good news that the Syldavian government has arranged a special aircraft for them. Tintin reads aloud the details, feeling reassured by the Air Minister's message and their continued support. As they walked through the busy airport, a vendor offered sweets and cigarettes to passers-by. Professor Alembic ignored the cigarettes without a glance, striding on beside Tintin while Snowy trotted at their heels. Professor Alembic, standing tall in his coat, informs Tintin that someone is calling them, leaving Tintin with a puzzled expression. Tintin's curiosity is piqued once more as he glances to the professor. A uniformed officer announces that all passengers for Prague should board the aircraft, clarifying the call that caught Tintin's attention. Tintin and Professor Alembic exchange a knowing look, ready to continue their journey. The bright yellow aircraft lifts off the ground, soaring gracefully into the sky, leaving the airport behind. The bright yellow aircraft glides over a patchwork of fields below, its engines humming steadily in the clear sky. Within the cabin, Professor Alembic looks thoughtful as Tintin examines a newspaper, puzzled by something. Tintin remarks on the oddity he's discovered about the professor. Deciding to set aside his concerns, Tintin suggests they focus on a brochure he's holding. Snowy stands by attentively, as Tintin shifts his attention to the enticing invitation within the pamphlet. Tintin sits by the window, absorbed in a newspaper titled, Syldavia, Kingdom of the Black Pelican, as the aircraft continues its steady flight. His brow furrows slightly, intrigued by the mention of this mysterious kingdom and its emblematic bird. Turning the page, Tintin delves deeper into the history and culture of Syldavia, captivated by images of traditional attire and the imposing guard at the royal treasure house. The vibrant illustrations depict a land rich with folklore and tradition, sparking his imagination about the adventures that await. The Battle of Xyleharum is depicted in a vivid illustration, showing a chaotic clash of armored warriors and colorful banners. Tintin studies the scene with eager eyes, sensing the historical significance of the battle and its impact on the kingdom's legacy. Inside the pamphlet, Tintin reads about King Musker XII, the current ruler of Syldavia, depicted in his ceremonial uniform, exuding an air of authority and tradition. The page continues to describe the regal sceptre of Ottokar IV, a symbol of power and unity, capturing Tintin's interest in the kingdom's rich history. Tintin, still engrossed in the pamphlet, finds the historical tales fascinating but shifts his attention to another pressing matter. He ponders aloud, noting the odd behavior of the professor, which has sparked his curiosity. Voicing his suspicions, Tintin reflects on the professor's remarkable vision despite claiming to be short-sighted, and the absence of cigarette use despite carrying them. Snowy listens attentively as Tintin resolves to stay vigilant, sensing that something is amiss with their travel companion. Tintin confides in Snowy, his voice filled with urgency, as he realizes that the professor might be an impostor. He recalls the alarming shouts he overheard on the telephone, suspecting that the real Professor Alembic has been kidnapped. Determined to reveal the truth, Tintin plots to unmask the false beard of the impostor once they reach Prague. His resolve to have the man arrested solidifies as he glances at the supposed professor, who remains oblivious to Tintin's suspicions. As the aircraft begins its descent, the impostor, feigning surprise, questions their arrival in Prague. Tintin confirms they are landing, his mind set on the confrontation that awaits. The plane touches down smoothly on the grassy airfield, its yellow frame gleaming under the bright sky. As the aircraft door opens, Tintin spots the impostor standing unsuspectingly and seizes this moment to act, whispering confidently, "Now's my chance." As he stepped forward from the plane, Tintin pretended to slip on the stairway, staggering with a sudden exclamation. The act drew startled looks, masking his true intentions. As Tintin slipped and tumbled down, his hand shot out and accidentally tugged at the professor's beard. Flustered, he apologized at once, while the professor fussed over his beard with a stiff nod. As Tintin regains his composure, a pilot approaches, addressing Professor Alembic and informing him about his awaiting plane. Tintin, still skeptical, touches the beard and realizes it's real, leaving him bewildered as the professor exchanges salutes with the pilot. Walking alongside the professor and the pilot, Tintin reflects on his doubts, questioning the peculiarities about the glasses and the cigarettes. He considers rational explanations, pondering if perhaps the professor simply sees better at a distance or decided to quit smoking, while Snowy trots by his side. Tintin watches as Professor Alembic steps confidently into a waiting plane, acknowledging the pilot with a nod. Snowy stays close, sensing Tintin's lingering uncertainty as the aircraft's door closes. The red plane roars to life and takes off gracefully over the grassy field, leaving Tintin to ponder the mystery behind the professor's true identity. The whirring propeller echoes as it climbs steadily into the sky. High above the clouds, the plane streaks across the sky, a crimson arrow against the vast blue expanse. Tintin, seated next to Professor Alembic, demonstrates to Snowy how to buckle up during turbulent flights, ensuring the little dog feels secure. The professor listens with a serene expression, adding an air of calm to the cabin as the plane continues its journey. As the pilot informs them they've crossed into Syldavian airspace, Tintin's curiosity about their destination grows. The vast landscape below hints at new adventures as the plane soars onward. Admiring the picturesque view, Tintin comments on the beauty of the country, while the pilot, with a wry smile, promises an even closer look. As they begin their descent, the pilot wishes them a smooth landing, hinting at the excitement awaiting on the ground. As the plane descends, a sudden jolt causes a trapdoor to spring open beneath Tintin's seat, startling Professor Alembic. The professor shouts Tintin's name in shock, realizing the young adventurer has disappeared through the opening. Snowy twists mid-air, attempting to align with Tintin as they fall, while the wind rushes past them. With the ground approaching rapidly, the thrill of the unexpected descent fills their senses. Tintin is tumbling through the sky, still clinging to his seat as the wind whips past him, his face a mix of surprise and fear. Clouds rush by, framing the dramatic descent against the endless blue sky. As Tintin twisted in mid-air, he reached behind the chair and grabbed hold of the parachute. His face tightened with urgency, knowing it was his only chance to steady himself. With no time to secure it properly, Tintin desperately grabs the parachute, pulling it free as he plummets downward. The chute deploys with a jolt, jerking him upwards and scattering stars around him as he finally begins to slow his fall. Losing his grip on the parachute, Tintin plunged into free fall, the wind tearing past him in a rush. Above, Snowy tumbled through the air and landed squarely on top of the drifting canopy, paws splayed in shock. Below them, a cart piled high with hay trundles along the rural path, its drivers oblivious to the drama unfolding above. The peaceful countryside contrasts sharply with the skyward spectacle of Tintin's descent. The farmers driving the cart suddenly notice the parachute and point skyward in shock, their exclamations filling the air. As they parachute with Snowy descends, their eyes widen in disbelief at the unusual sight. One of the farmers, clutching a pitchfork, gestures wildly, pointing at the descending parachute as he exclaims in disbelief. His companion, equally bewildered, tries to follow the path. The farmers gazed upward in astonishment at the parachute drifting down, Snowy perched comically on top. Their surprise turned to shock as something suddenly plummeted into their hay-filled cart with a heavy thud. And that wraps up this chapter. If you enjoyed the story, head to the next part and be sure to like and subscribe for more adventures on Comic Yahad.